Tom Dawson, San Luis Obispo. Mr. Chairman, I do feel sorry for these builders here. They come into this very restrictive building climate in this county, damaging the economy, hard to build a standalone house, all based on sustainable development philosophy. Philosophy has consequences. I noticed that in the presentation we didn't hear much about social equity. As I read through some of these materials, I saw a lot about social equity. And is it the proper role of the county government to take the role of social engineering to achieve greater equity through land use regulation? This is purely motivated by the United Nations Agenda 21 Smart Growth, Sustainable Development Doctrine. If they weren't inserting themselves into your business here, you would likely never have gotten yourself into this very complex issue. What are the social equity concerns being balanced here? Because it mentioned the balance of social equity in some of your materials. Can the planning staff and planning commissioners list the concerns? What is being balanced? Do these words have any substantive policy meaning, or are they just gibberish? Do the planners have any studies presenting data that there is even a social equity problem in the county? What are the kinds of social equity problems that need to be remedied? Are there alternative solutions like promoting building and business, opening up building and making it easier to create more jobs for people? A change of poverty mentality, promoting high values and better education, that would be an alternative. Who are the impacted people? Are they in specific locations? I encourage you to abandon this ordinance as it is convoluted and confusing. In some states and counties, people are outlawing anything to do with sustainable development, smart growth, and Agenda 21. Please do only the absolute minimum necessary to meet state mandates and scrap the rest. Thank you.
Before you start my time, I need a ruling from you, Mr. Chairman Irving. TAG had intended to send a letter, but as you know, Nick Marquardt was our chair and he passed away, and we've been in a little bit of turmoil, so that letter was not sent. I didn't realize that until yesterday when I read your package. And being a member of TAG for several years, and this is my 5th time being elected last week, our first meeting is not until next Thursday. And I would like to represent as a member that was there at the TAG meeting what TAG said and forego my right of individual.
I'll allow that, Mr. Pelfrey.
Because I do know that the advisory groups are usually allowed 5 minutes because to cover everybody's, so it makes a difference to you.
To clarify though, that TAG has discussed this issue, and has
Yes.
there been was there a formal vote or
Yes,
a letter
there
of
was.
support?
The letter was meant to be sent here. It's in our January 17th minutes.
That's fine. I will allow you as a representative of the advisory group.
Okay. My name is Bill Pelfrey. I'm from Templeton. I am going to speak on what happened at TAG on this matter, and I am not speaking for TAG, but rather what happened there. Several concerns. This was presented by Karen Nolan, represented that there would not be any changes to the Templeton Community Design Plan. The board and members there, by an overwhelming majority, had severe questions on this. One was, why is it only for the inland? Is it because the Coastal Commission will not approve it, as said they wouldn't? Another one is, you have to forgive me here. Well, the design plan calls for 7,500 square foot lots. That has always been that way. We do have an opportunity in our design plan for smaller lots that are down to 6,000 square feet. People self-help housing has said they will not build on smaller lots because people do not want it. Now, this all came about because of the Davis project. It goes by a different name that happened at our arena. They were going down to 2,000 square foot lots. This one continues even smaller. It goes down to 1,750 square foot lots. And that is totally against the community design plan. It also included recreation, which is what the arena was built for, designated for fire problems, and this is taking away from that. We are worried about also something that happened twice in the last 25 years, Templeton has attempted to become its own community. But LAFCO has come and said we do not have the tax base for it. Now, what sense does it make to densify a community that doesn't have a tax base to handle what they have now for road maintenance and such, and densify it further, breaking everything in our community design plan? Doesn't that put us further in the hole? Isn't that more problems? Now, I feel sorry for the builders, but there's a statement I came across that says people believe what they want to believe, and they refuse to believe what they don't want to believe, no matter how much evidence there is to the contrary. The builders here are reaching because they need to work. Now, I understand that, but at the expense of a community like Templeton that doesn't have transportation. Your smart growth plan states, live where you work, walking communities. Templeton's two sources of employment are the hospital and the school district. The next biggest, I believe, is the granary that has 12 people. Now, why would you do this in Templeton where there are no jobs there? It makes no sense. Why would you crowd us like that and use areas as this density increase that we don't have parks for? We have 45% of the parks recommended. Why densify in the areas the county has noted in Templeton is right where you would put a park. Now, these strip parks that you're talking, I noticed from your slideshow, are approximately 3 parking spots long and 2 parking spots wide, according to your presentation this morning. Is that really a recreation area? Now, these are just some of the concerns that we have. It goes on and on. There is nothing in here that is not violated. It will allow densities of one dwelling per 6,000 square feet of land, and units as small as 300 square feet. Now, next to the Atascadero police station, just north of it, there's the old motor hotels. Those things were 250 square feet. It's now used by Latinos who are farm workers. That's not living. Who's going to buy these? Right now, I've had people call me, and I get this constantly. Where do we go to get rental? Maybe instead of building single-family homes, I'll use that cuss word and say we should build apartments, because people want to rent. They're not in financial situations to buy, and we need to find some place for them to be. We've already ruined a nation by giving housing to people that couldn't afford it and then bundling them up. Why would we do that with small housing that people really don't want and is not fit except for a single person? If it's used for married people or if it's used for people with children, there is not room in this development. Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Mike Brown representing CoLab. We support this ordinance. We believe that it could be very helpful to our building and development community, and that it could provide workforce housing for folks. We think that along with the other speakers that you ought to give this maximum flexibility, not maybe even think about expanding it to include some creative form-based zoning rather than building in all sort of the little Euclidean things. And the other thing is, these, I very carefully review and maybe listen to the building community about the common gathering areas. These things can be problematical. You saw on that slide earlier, one of the projects had this big hunk of grass with nothing on it. That's probably just a headache for that project. That being said, CoLab does not endorse smart growth. We think, as this says, there ought to be balance, and for a county like San Luis Obispo County, freestanding classic subdivisions, estate houses, and ranchettes are a very important component of your strategic plan, your strategic economic plan, and the future. And so we don't endorse some of the rhetoric that came with this about smart growth, and again, particularly this section that talks about social equity. We think, and perhaps not today, but as the Planning Commission and strategically, you need to have a session where you and your staff have a public dialogue about exactly what do those words mean here. What is this social equity about? Why is it there? What are the numeric indicia that there is a social equity problem in the unincorporated county that needs to be rectified through your land use policies? That's a real question. Or is that just gibberish to fill the page? It has to be one or the other. The scrivener had to mean something, or he or she didn't. And it would be well worth it to air that out. Thank you very much.
I'm sure you are, Commissioner Christianson. Do you want to ask questions, or are you moving toward a
I want to
delay?
get going here before noon.
I understand. We may need to go past it a little bit.
Yeah. I have some comments to make and a suggestion, and then we'll see what everybody else thinks too. Okay, so it's okay.
You're
Housing, I love it. Yeah, I would agree with Mr. Lloyd that if you're going to change land use ordinances, you better get it right the first time, because it's going to be a long time before you see it again. So I really appreciate staff's work on it so far, and I appreciate the comments we've had. I think they've been very helpful. I basically do agree with all the comments that were made by Mr. Lloyd in his letter, and the speakers, and all the comments that were made by the Workforce Housing Coalition. Is that what you guys are? Yeah, Coalition. I think those were all good points, and I think it would be great for the staff to go back and kind of hash out the language on a lot of the issues that were brought up. I especially wanted to mention the homeowners association versus the maintenance agreements. I agree completely that small homeowners associations do not work. I would say at least 20 units, if not way more than that. And have it be unit driven, or at least have the option somewhere, have it either or, but you should not require homeowners associations for small developments. They really just don't work. There's just not enough people to be on them. And they end up getting taken over by the by certain kinds of people who love leading homeowners associations, which sometimes isn't best for anybody else. Let's just say that. I also think the comments about massing and height are very important. I don't understand why a well-planned, attractive, 3-story or 2.5-story, however you count stories, subdivision wouldn't be just as good as making rules about 75% and 28 feet and all that kind of stuff. So I think that the suggestions that were made were very good. I also think you should go back and have a discussion about common open space. I'm a believer that open space does add a lot of kind of mental benefits. I'm not so sure about the practical use of them. I agree with some of those comments. So it would be good to, I think, some more discussion between our developers and builders and county staff with relying on our ordinances and our requirements would be a useful thing. we might want to maybe exclude a few other types of developments. Yeah, I think they were great comments. And then I also appreciated all the comments from the advisory councils and the advisory groups. I think that probably the most important thing there is to make it very clear somewhere that indeed those specific area plans, those specific community plans do supersede this ordinance if there's something specific. I like Mr. Rosales' idea of having some things optional so that they could be discussed with the community if they wanted to do something different than the community plans. But I agree, I had a hard time finding that little gem of knowledge in here, and so obviously other people did too. They didn't see that because they were concerned about it. So just make that clear, that that's the way the ordinances work, and then it'll be fine. I'm ecstatic that Mr. Brown of CoLab supports this ordinance, and I wanted to let him know that he actually is supporting smart growth, like it or not. It's a matter of labels perhaps, but this is a smart growth ordinance, and it's a good one, because it was made in collaboration with the folks that are involved in it. It provides flexibility and options for housing, my reading of the term social equity was that it meant things like workforce housing and stuff like that. It just means that you're going to pay attention to the people as well as to the economics of the environment. So I wasn't too worried about that, and it's nothing like, there is nothing in there in the ordinance about anything that big, so we're good on that. So I would be supportive if the rest of the commission were in agreement to send this back to staff for just a little more tinkering, and then hopefully we'll have a good next meeting.